If I think about audits, my blood pressure rises.
It's like a detective checking in your work.
In our business, audits can literally take a company out. Well, welcome, valued listeners, to the Offsite Team Podcast. I'm here with April. How are you today, April?
Been busy. It's end of the month. How are you?
It is end of month, end of quarter when we're recording this. I was also at a medical conference all week, so I decided, you know what, let's talk audits. I hate audits. If I think about audits, my blood pressure rises. Because in our business, audits can literally take a company out. So, picture this. The word audit pops up and instantly the atmosphere tenses, pulses quicken, and a cloud of apprehension envelops the room. It's almost like hearing the distant footsteps of a formidable entity coming closer and closer. But what if, instead of a foe, we welcome it as a friend? What if, within the realm of our respiratory, DME, rehab business, we could transform audits from daunting challenges that cause sleepless nights, and I have had sleepless nights over audits, into powerful allies on our journey to excellence. I would love for that to happen. So when I say the word audit, what do you think about, April?
Well, basically, it's like a detective checking in your work.
Yeah, it's just like, Magnum PI or Columbo or, think of the detective, and that's kind of really what an audit is. And so what we're going to do today on this podcast is we're going to demystify the concepts of audits. We're going to dissect their components, unveil the strategies that can turn them into stepping stone towards unparalleled quality and service in the respiratory, DME, rehab care domain. We'll dive into in-depth discussions, real-life scenarios, and because it's from us, I would call it expert advice, all designed to give your DME with the knowledge to not just survive, but to truly win with audits. In the old days, and when I say old days, I'm talking like between 2004 and 2010. I once had an audit. It was Medicare. It covered 10 power wheelchairs that I had dispensed. I had all what I thought. I had all of the appropriate documentation for these 10 power wheelchairs. And they audited. They're like, give me everything, because this is what it says that you have, A to Z, everything. So I'm like, okay, I can do this. I had never had a major audit like this. I'd had one here, one there, but they asked for 10. So I had these massive files, and you know what? On those files, I was missing like one or two items. I was like, oh, crumb, I'm missing one or two items. I need to go see if the doctor can fix it for me. And I did it, and I sent it in, and it got denied, and they sent it back to us, and then we kept raising it all the way up to ALJ. And it kept getting pushed out and pushed out. They recouped the money on it. In the end, you know what? I kind of got distracted and I stopped appealing the claims, and I never did get paid on those 10 wheelchairs. And this is when wheelchairs were reimbursing your KO823 close to $5,000. So our business lost between $35,000 and $50,000 because my paperwork was not squeaky clean. It's horrible. It was the most expensive continuing education I've really ever done. I mean, think of going off to college. You can get a master's degree for $20,000 or $30,000, and here I spent $50,000, and I learned a whole lot about audits and what that looks like. We don't want that. Whether you're a respiratory therapist, DME manager, or anyone passionate about improving healthcare delivery, this episode's going to be, what's funny? My Apple Watch, what does it just say? You can kind of see this. High heart rate. Literally, talking about audits just gave me a high heart rate. Thank you, Apple Watch. That never happens. But you can tell I have a little bit of complex PTSD regarding audits. True story. So audits can actually really be our friend. So I think you know where I'm going to go with this. How could I have the audacity? I've had some little PTSD with some bad audits, and I'm saying audits can be our friend. How?
Oh, well, definitely, because whenever just like in anything in life, right? Whenever you make mistakes, it depends on how you will take it. If you take it positively, then you will use that mistake where you learn something. And then
absolutely,
eventually you're not going to do the same thing. So we'll be more careful. So next time there will be an audit, you want to make sure we have the documentation that they need.
Absolutely. I love audits now. Certain kind of audits. I don't like the really bad audits on the backside. But for example, prior approvals, I absolutely loved. Anytime we can do a prior approval, I love, especially because essentially we are getting the audit audit on the front end and they're telling us this is going to be paid or it's not going to be paid, we should embrace those every single time. And if you can use it with the insurance, you should, because in my experience working with doctors, they'll do the paperwork and they'll just say, well, I have a med degree. I'm Dr. So-and-so, therefore it must be right. I can tell them they're wrong. They're not going to believe me because I don't have an MD, even though I know I'm right. But if I hand them the prior approval from Medicare saying, yeah, this didn't pass the pre-audit because this doctor didn't do it wrong, I'm just the messenger. I just get to say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, you know what? You didn't do it right. If you do this, I'm sure they'll accept it next time. I know you can do it. I believe in you, doctor. As a result, it's really worked well for us. So last year we switched billing company. It was really fascinating. We are a rehab company, as you know. And I would say most rehab companies, in terms of basic wheelchairs, they do mostly K1s, a few K2s, maybe a handful of K3s and K4s. They're really I don't think they're hard to qualify for, but some companies don't even try for K3 or K4 because you have to have in the chart notes certain things. And if they're not there, you're going to lose in an audit.
Correct.
Well, our new billing company, when we came over, they were like, you don't do too many K3s and K4s, but it really is over the industry average. So we're going to recommend that you not do as many. And I was like, no, we're going to keep doing it. Why do you think I was so empowered and I decided not to listen to our billing company on that?
It's because based on the experience, first of all, you're an ATP. So we need to have that. Second,
but there's a lot of ATPs that are full of it. So let's just say I happen to be one that's full of it instead. And why was I not worried?
And also another thing is because we have a good connection with the referrals. So, and also it's a mistake from the past that you have thought about it, that we need to make sure these documents are on file.
And I also have an amazing Offsite team behind me. And whereas before, when I was audited on these power wheelchairs, it was just me working on it. Now I have a team behind me. They go through all the files for me. And they're like, hey, we have a K4 wheelchair and, a high strength, lightweight wheelchair. And for that to be covered, we need to have in the chart notes the doctor saying, yeah, this patient does not have the strength to propel a standard wheelchair, but they can do a high strength, lightweight chair. And therefore, we'd like to see them in that chair instead. That's all you need. And so what we're doing is, if that is in the file, we have lots of confidence that this is going to be dispensed. If not, even if they want a high-strength lightweight chair, they're going to have to do it non-assignment, and we're going to have to bill out a K1 or something like that. But our off-site team gives us the power to do that. They're following up. And it makes us feel really, really good with our audits. I absolutely love audits. Actually, I love audits because I'm not doing them. If I were doing them, I'd be miserable. But that's the role of you and our billing team and all that good stuff. So when we talk about audits, there's a lot of different ways that we can win in different audit strategies. So there is an audit, for those of you who don't know, I really hope you don't know this, because when I even hear the word CERT, which stands for Comprehensive Error Rate Testing, I literally, this causes my blood rate to go up. We've never had a bad CERT, but the thought of it being bad literally scares me, which is why our files are so perfect. But essentially the way a CERT goes is, let's say Medicare is going to audit 100 files, and let's say of those 100 files, 25% of them are bad. So let's say 30% of them are bad. So let's say they audit 10 files and 30% are bad, so 3 out of the 10 are bad. So this means 7 of your 10 are great. In school, this gets you a C. It gets you a passing grade. With Medicare and CERT, they're going to extrapolate that across everything and take back 30% of your money. That's horrible. And then, of course, then you're going to have to fight it and all this. You do not want a CERT audit. And this is why when we do get audited, I love it, because I'd rather them audit one file, make sure it's correct, which is typically what happens. But there are other kind of audits. You don't want a CERT audit, and you don't want it to go that way, because now you're not only going to have to fight it, you're going to have to go get yourself a lawyer. They are expensive. Okay, so there's CERT audits. I don't like those, but in other words, make sure your paperwork's correct. So next is what's called a RAC audit. This stands for Recovery Audit Contractor. I really hope none of them are listening to me because I don't like them either. So this is like the people, it's not Medicare, but it's the people that Medicare hire behind it. And here's my problem with RACs. They're basically a commissionable auditor that get paid for getting you in trouble. So let's just think about that for a second. So if you go in, you only get paid if I get so-and-so in trouble. That's like the worst. I mean, we're just immediately enemies. So thank God we don't do too many of those. And I'm going to get into some of the good audits, like TPEs. We're going to finish with that. Those I love. And I'll tell you why later. But RAC audits, basically they're subcontractors. Their job is to come in and make your life miserable because if they can claim, let's say $100,000 in improper billings, they get a percentage of that.
Oh, okay. Right.
And so, but let's think about that. So in other words, they're getting paid to find problems. So are they looking out for your benefit? No, they want to get as much stuff as possible. So I'm not a fan of RACs. They are needed to cut down on fraud, but there are other ways of that. Of doing that. And my favorite would be the TPE. So we'll finish with the TPE, which is my favorite audit. There's also called the CMS RAC ADR. What these are limits to how many claims can be audited. I do like these. So typically they'll say you can only audit 16 claims per 45 days. Things like that are really, really nice with audit rules. There's also what's called the UPIC. It's formerly the ZPIC. I have never had one of these. I don't want one of these. For any of our listeners, if you ever get an audit that is either a UPIC, just call VGM or call a lawyer. This is just like not good. They will take you out if you don't do everything perfectly. I've never had this before. I never want it. But if you get a UPIC, just go straight to VGM and say, I need help. So in other words, this is kind of that extrapolation audit. If you get 3 out of 10 claims that you fail, they're going to take away 30% of all your money. And a lot of people, they cannot do that. Then there's what's called an SMRC, Supplemental Medicare Medical Review Contractor. I'm not going to talk about those. But what I do want to talk about is what's called the TPE. If you don't know the TPE, you should know it. You will get to experience the TPE. TPE stands for Target, Probe, and Educate. This is one of those things, finally, I don't compliment the government a lot, but they did the right thing here. So, April, you know what a TPE, Target, Probe, and Educate is. What is it?
It's actually great for audits. So that's what they does. It's more of checking, making sure that the categories falls under the required information. So.
Yeah, the TPEs are our friends. If you get a TPE audit, don't say, oh, this is so hard, I have to do it. No, they're our friend. And the reason why, they actually want to help us. And this is whoever came up with the idea for a TPE, brilliant idea, because instead of auditing on the backside and recouping and causing businesses to go out of business, what they're doing is they're auditing on the front end or a small degree of claims, and they want to help you out. And typically a TPE, you want to pass that first round of TPE. So they'll audit, I don't know, what is it, 10, 50? How many claims do they tend to audit? Do you remember this? You've done a lot.
Probably 15, I'd say.
15? Yeah, so they might audit 10 to 15 claims. What are some of the TPEs we've had? We've done catheters we've been audited on. What else?
Documentation for
diabetic supplies.
Diabetic supplies, yep.
What else?
I think there's one
TPE.
for hospital bed.
Oh, yeah, we had a TPE for hospital bed. And I love it. Absolutely love a TPE audit because it'll let you know, hey, you passed these, you didn't pass these. And on the ones that you don't pass, they're going to actually walk you through the process of getting those claims to a point where Medicare can pay for them. So their job is to help you get the money that's due to you, and they're going to help you figure that out with the doctor's office. So I love it when we pass a TPE audit, and it's like, hey, it's like getting an A grade on just keep on keeping on. Now, if you fail the first round of TPE, it's not the end of the world. However, it should start to worry you. So there are, I'm aware of another medical supply, they failed the first round of TPE. They didn't think it was a big deal because TPEs aren't that big of a deal. But then you go on to round 2, and they did not take that one seriously either. Eventually you go all the way up, and then you're on prepayment hold. And so this is why I like TPEs. They don't put you on a prepayment hold. You have to fail fail round 1 and round 2 first. So I would say by the time you get to round 3, really, if you fail the first 2 rounds, you deserve to be on prepayment hold. I'm sorry if there's any medical supplies listening to us right now and if I offended you, but really, it's like saying, oh man, I got in trouble for running through a stop sign. Yeah, you ran through 5 stop signs and they finally caught you on the 5th one. So this is kind of a TPE audit. They're going to give you multiple warnings, and it's great to work with your team. So now we've done a lot of our audits. Well, obviously, our offsite team probably does like 95% of our audits. So how do you work with our offsite team, and why do they work so well with audits? And what's some of their secret sauce, April?
Oh, well, first and foremost, we need to make sure that we have the proper documentation. I think if we have that one, then we shouldn't be scared of audits. Making sure that we know what the LCDs are or what the document criteria document requirement is needed in each DME items. So we have to comply with that.
And one of the things that, to toot our horn a little bit, if we give you, or if you guys hire one of our offsite team members, I would assume you have all this in place. But let's say you don't have this in place. We are also giving you our spreadsheets on exactly what is needed for these categories. So if you are a really small DME business and you don't have all the policies and procedures, our offsite team is coming with these policies and procedures, because let's be honest, if we give you a couple billers and if they get audited and you get recouped, well, then you don't have money to pay our team. We want you to win, we want them to win, and it's really liberating. So it really, really helps. Now, also in regards to audits, one of the things, I'm going to compliment Medicare again. This is going to be hard. CMS or Medicare every year lists areas that they are going to target. I love this. They will tell you, this year we're going to target diabetic supplies or CPAP machines or you name it. It's all out there. If you don't know what they're targeting this year, send April and I an email and we'll tell you what they're targeting this year. But this lets you know, hey, in 2024, this is what's going to be targeted. They've just told you what the test is going to be on. Well, if you don't pass it, April, that's on you, because they just told you you're going to get audited in this category. And I like that, because typically, then 75% of the audits, we know what they're going to audit us on. So what we do as a store and with our clients, we really dial down on those categories. Now, I'll give you an example. Canes. Canes have requirements for billing. I have never had a cane audited. Now, if I get a cane audited after this podcast, I'll know that Medicare is listening. But I've never had a cane audited. So we don't necessarily audit our files on canes. But we have lots of audits on oxygen, CPAP machines.
Yes.
And there's a lot of we know what they're looking for. So we make sure those files are squeaky clean. So in the audit process with your medical supply, make sure you understand, I am really good in these categories. Even ones that are not highly audited, if there's also a large profit margin, we would do that too. Because it's one thing, if we get a cane taken back, big deal. What I bought for $6 and was reimbursed for $11. It wouldn't be fun, but it's not the end of the world. But a Group 3 chair or higher end things, you always want those paid for. Now, hey, do you know what ALJ is, April? What's
yes,
ALJ?
I actually submitted one.
Oh, you did?
Yes, before, when I was processing PAP documentation. So it's been denied. And then I did submit an appeal, but it gets denied again. So it went straight to ALJ. ALJ is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more of like a court process.
Yeah, you actually go in front of a U.S. judge.
Yes.
And fight the case. It's one of those, they tend to be a little bit more liberal because they will actually look at the large scheme of things. So the lower grades of audits might get denied over really small rudimentary issues. A judge is going to look, hey, did this person truly have sleep apnea? And they'll be able to look, okay, so you happen to be wrong on this one thing. They'll say, you know what, it actually really depends on the judge, but sometimes they'll still pay even if you don't have all the documentation. Now, the problem with it, that's not a get out of jail free card, because to get to ALJ, just a couple of years ago, you were out 6 years. So just because they might rule in your favor, you don't necessarily want to wait 6 years. And we've had several claims. We thought it was going to be paid, but we didn't want to wait 6 years, so we just gave up on it and started from scratch again. So that's where it's really, really hard. You don't want to go to ALJ, but ALJ is always an option. The ones that we tend to take to ALJ would be our high-end power chairs that just something dumb happened where we missed something. We haven't had it lately. And then especially patients who have passed away, because then you don't have a time limit because you're like, well, they've passed away and it's worth fighting it. And we will. And we tend to win more than we lose. So ALJ is an option as well too. But in the end, we need to learn to love audits. And or if you're like me, and I don't love audits, but we end up using we use a billing company, we use our offsite team. I have people who are really high in compliance. Use them if that is not your sweet spot. I'd rather worry about other things. I'm aware of how audits work, but it's good to know, hey, where are we in the audit process? So, when you're teaching our billers, what is one of the harder things to teach them about audits? Or do they just pick it up right away?
It's important whenever I'm teaching them. It is important that they know what the audit is for, because if I keep on teaching and they don't know what it is for, then it doesn't make sense at all. It's important that they know that it is important for the business because it can also create loss, but at the same time, audits will help us and improve our process, the way we do our work. So it's very helpful.
Yeah. It's like a report card. No one likes report cards unless you do really well in report cards. Then you can like report cards. Learn to love the audit within reason. Now, one other thing, know the rules, whatever the HCPCS is. So, for example, like in Medicare, if someone gets audited on the HCPCS code A4353 and they have an order on record, there is documentation that basically says that we are not required to have documentation you're asking for as long, for up to 7 years, as long as the original qualifying documentation is older. So basically what it means is once qualified, always qualified. So a lot of auditors don't know all the rules. So this is the advantage of having a bigger billing team, or let's say even if you hire one or two offsite team members, they have the ability of talking to us. Hey, what about this? What about this product? What did you do to get it covered? There are certain things that you can ask for to get things covered. We've also here at our store, this should be a different issue, but we've run into Medicaid plans not following the rules of Medicare plans in our state. We figured out how to get around it, or not really get around it, but basically fight and win these claims by saying certain things. So for example, if you're in another state and you notice that your Medicaid plans or your Med Advantage plans are not following Medicare rules, we know exactly how to basically appeal those claims so you are paid for. So like in the state of Washington, we have K1 wheelchairs, which is a standard wheelchair. They are not paying for those until someone gets a physical therapy evaluation, which is not Medicare criteria. We know exactly how to fix that. Anything else on audits you'd like to share, April?
I'd say that with regards to audit, I would put it like in a layman's term, it is for quality assurance. So it's a win-win for both. It's to assess the quality of products, the service that we provide, the internal process that we do, and at the same time, it helps the organization. So whoever is listening in the podcast right now, any DME company, it will help their organization maintain their standards, improve their standards, and to ensure customer satisfaction as well. Because if we're doing a good job, then it's good for the customer.
It makes the customer happy. No one likes having a CPAP machine denied, because eventually, depending on what documentation you have behind her, if you don't have one of those forms that say that you can recoup it, the patient has to pay for the item. It's going to come to me on my drive.
Is that the ABN?
ABN. If you don't have an ABN, then it might get denied. You have to eat it. But even if you do have an ABN, you don't end up getting all the right paperwork, the customer doesn't like it either, because then they have to pay for it. Correct. We want happy customers. But hey, if you want to talk more audits, reach out to April and myself, or if you just don't have enough people behind you to help process the paperwork so you're going to be squeaky clean in an audit, reach out to us. We have the team. We have billers already trained for you and your DME company. So reach out to us at offsiteteammember.com. And we'd love to chat with you and let us make your life a whole lot easier. You work too hard to have the government take your money back. But hey, next week, we are going to be doing what's the difference between a call center and working from home? Because there are a lot of offsite team members and Filipino workers in the Philippines. Some work from home and some work in call center. We're going to dissect it and just basically figure out what is better. Working in a call center or working from home. Both have their pros and cons, but that is next week. And until then, thanks for listening and watching Offsite Team Members Podcast.